The old Anthony Jeselnik is back at it again, and he's going after Rogan and Tony Hinchcliffe. This guy's not stopping. I think, he's trying to get some attention on his special, because I had no idea who this guy was, and nobody's ever said he's a great comic in my world. But who knows? I'm going to watch his special and see for myself soon. But let's go ahead and see what the Jeselnik is doing
good
to Rogan.
When two comics are at odds or talking shit on each other, I think it's good for the art form.
Yeah,
but now everyone's got to be friends,
right?
You've got to worry about what Joe thinks about these things.
And if you're provocative for the sake of being provocative, which again, okay, you can't complain about it. You can't be provocative for the sake of being provocative and be like, why aren't you laughing? You guys don't get it. Like, that's what embarrasses me about modern stand-up comedy, is the complaining from people who are just so clearly trying to provoke.
I would defend to the death his right to do everything he does. The thing that I find unusual, and it's not a criticism so much, but his targets are underdogs. And comedy traditionally has picked on people in power, people who abuse their power.
So a few weeks ago, we made a video going over an episode of Anthony Jeselnik's podcast in which he essentially called out comedians who for the past couple of years have been more podcasters than...
I want to give it up. Comedy enforcement. He put some gel in his hair. Last time he was rocking the George Clooney. Now he's rocking the Ryan Phillippe. It's an upgrade.
Actual real comedians who focus on their comedy. And although back then he didn't mention anyone by name, he did say that he wasn't going on Joe Rogan's podcast anymore, even though he did in the past. But it was very clear, at least to me, that he was talking about Tim Dillon and or Andrew Schultz and Tony Hinchcliffe potentially, but 100% for sure he was talking about Tim Dillon.
Notice I said podcasters, I did not say comedians. If you have a presidential candidate or a major politician on your show and you do not fuck with them in any way, you're a podcaster.
Okay, I'm hoping maybe comedy enforcement does something here, right? But I think this guy's a little salty. I think he's a little salty because he's not getting the little gravy train. And I'm not even sure he's a good comedian. I'm going to do a video when I watch his special about it. I'm not even sure. He's just talking. He didn't get in the Rogan Club. The Rogan Club is full of a bunch of people that don't deserve anything because they're terrible comedians. And he's probably a terrible comedian. I don't know. Don't get mad at me. I'll find out. But this is just what I'm summing up. And he didn't get the invite to the gravy train. I would be a little salty if I didn't get to, do nothing and ride the gravy train and get rich. But Jeselnik, he even insults his homie right here in this video. I just don't know. I think he's a little off.
You're not a comedian. If you cancel an entire weekend of shows at the very last second so you can run yourself to Washington, D.C., to interview a vice presidential candidate and then post a picture of your arms around each other, you're not a comedian.
And,
Okay. I think that's stupid. Sometimes, look, for a lot of people to meet Donald Trump or a president or a former president or a presidential candidate, it's a big deal. A once in a lifetime opportunity. You got to make some choices. I don't think it's that bad. You have to look at your fans. They paid for it. That's really bad. Maybe try and schedule later, but I don't know. I think these guys have soft wieners. And what I mean by soft wieners is that's just how they live their life, like a giant soft wiener. And they just go after each other. Instead of getting good at comedy, they just flop their floppy, useless dicks all over the place. And they're a giant soft wiener.
Back then, we did mention how there was a clear switch between Anthony a few months back and then, because it was obvious that he was being a lot more honest and open with how he felt about the Rogan sphere and those comedians. And well, now that his comedy special is out on Netflix and now that he did more podcast episodes, it's very clear what was going on. And it wasn't just a marketing ploy or him being jealous of those comedians.
I think
instead,
so.
it's clear that he's coming after comedians or comics who don't really respect the art form anymore, as cringe as that sounds, and they're just in it to make money and get more famous. And so in this video, we'll go through Anthony's most recent appearance on other podcasts and comments that he made, because now he's not holding back and is actually calling out comedians by name, including Tony Hinchcliffe. But on top of that, we finally have a reaction from other comics when it comes to this whole Anthony situation.
Okay.
So let's get started.
Before, I have to disagree with him. If you're doing what you're doing and you're doing good, there's always going to be people that mess up the art form. Usually the people that are complaining about those messing up the art form, me, we're not doing anything. Anthony Jeselnik. I don't know what, I complain about Joe Rogan. I'm not going to lie. I think he's dog shit. Dog shit comedian. I'm more upset that he lies to everybody. But see, I'm here. Who am I? But Anthony Jeselnik's a comedian, and he's doing it. And if he's doing his thing and it's going, who cares what anybody else does? There's always going to be people. It's just life. People mess up everything. That's what people do. I think he's jealous. I got to disagree with homeboy here. He's jealous. Because if you wasn't jealous, you wouldn't be doing it now, would you? You wouldn't care. Who cares? Just make your money and go off. Who cares?
But I hate people complaining about cancel culture. I hate comics complaining in general. It's the second comedy boom. It's not going anywhere. People are making more money than ever before. And Dave Chappelle, who's won every award in the world, is complaining that cancel culture is making his job harder. It's like, your job shouldn't be easy. Right. If you're going to make that much fucking money, like, hey, maybe it should be a little hard.
Yeah.
I got no issue with that.
Yeah. I just got done working. You know what? I got up at 6. Not 6, earlier than that. But I started work at 6, right? And now I'm going to make a video and then I'm going to go work some more. You know what I'm going to do? I don't even know why I said that. But the point is, y'all should be grateful to make millions of dollars to not be funny. Dave Chappelle is one of the only ones that are funny. And some people say that he wasn't even that funny, like he used to be. These guys are making money doing nothing. Sitting down and talking to somebody famous? Putting up a dog shit special on Netflix? 60, 50, 30, 20, $10 million. All over the place. Me? That ain't the case. Nobody offered me $1 million to do some half-ass shit today. No, I had to do a full, hard job. So shut the fuck up!
Love that line. You're a comedian.
I agree with him on this too. He can't. When you're making that much, shut the fuck up, bitch.
Do your job. Mm-hmm. It's just so perfect.
I think it's kind of groupthink, and I'm surprised that I'm attacked by saying cancel culture is not a thing. Mm-hmm. That people that just not parroting what every other comic is saying would somehow be seen as treasonous and not as an individual. Like, I have my own thoughts.
Right,
I don't
exactly.
And I would be way more successful. And I'd have way more money if I did complain about cancel culture. Mm-hmm. If I went the other way that a lot of these guys go. And I think it's stupid, and I'm happy to fight about it.
Yeah.
I think it's good for comedy when two comics are at odds or talking shit on each other. I think it's good for the art form.
Yeah,
but now everyone's got to be friends.
Right.
You've got to worry about what Joe thinks about these things.
Yeah.
And have Joe mediate fights. And I like Joe, but I don't get the whole like.
Dude, Joe is so short. Who takes him seriously? Like, who cares what his little guy thinks? Go on, little tyke. Right off in the sun. Don't give a fuck what you think. Who cares? He's not even funny. He's a little tyke that's not funny. That's bad.
Stand-up comedy, I got into it because you get to do it by yourself.
Right.
You go on stage alone.
Yeah, with your audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why has he got some Pringles? Of all the chips you could get, a Pringles? Damn. I thought they had money. I would not be eating no goddamn Pringles. Those like dry ass, weird shaped chips. Ugh. They taste kind of like cardboard with a little Parmesan on them. Ugh.
These let's get a group together. I never understood it.
I know, I'm the same way. I have a real hard time with it. I don't want to be a part of a club.
No.
And what's so ironic is that if you're not in step
This just sounds like two gay men complaining. I might be right about that.
with every aspect of what they're talking about, then they kick you out. Mm-hmm. Well, how anti-comedy is that?
Yeah.
Pity.
You know what I mean?
Because you don't think the way we all think.
Right.
It's like, how is that?
Yes,
Shouldn't I be
exactly.
celebrated for thinking differently? Isn't that
Exactly.
the point of comedy?
Yeah.
Is to think differently from everyone else?
Yeah, isn't that why we're all friends in the first place? Because we think differently?
Yeah.
And look, the timing of this was very interesting because for the past couple of weeks or for the past month, both Joe and Tony have been going hard trying to defend Tony's failed Puerto Rico joke, even going as far as to bend over backwards and do the most insane mental gymnastics trying to defend Tony's ego and explain why the joke wasn't that bad at the end of the day.
He gets freaked out about the environment. He gets freaked out about the pollution patch.
While he's in a throne.
We were super high. We were super high in the green room.
And we'll get to Joe's wild excuse in a second. But again, what's a lot more interesting is the timing of this, because a while back, not too long ago, but a while back, this pretty much happened to Tom Segura and Burt Kreischer when they had their horrible sets at the roast of Tom Brady. And back then we called it out, and most people agreed that that even though they didn't bomb, they did have a horrible set. And since the whole thing was actually live, we saw that the performance was absolutely horrible. And funny enough, back then, the only one that was brutally honest with them and trashed them to their face on their own show was Tony Hinchcliffe.
Sent them a script. They send their script, like their Puncho script, combine the two.
Yeah, you're like, that's good enough.
Kind of.
That's great.
I'll tell you what.
No reason to work on this anymore. It's just the most watched thing ever.
First and foremost, all you should be saying is thank you, Bert and Tom. Because without us, it is a bunch of people doing the exact same thing.
Right.
Like we broke up. We definitely.
Yeah,
thank you to Kim Kardashian.
It was a comedy up until you guys started. And then you guys got to really change the tone a bit. You had to make everybody appreciative of laughter.
I had no idea. I told him this.
I'm still living in oblivion. I had a blast. I think we did great. I've not met one person that did not like what we did.
But now that it's Tony, the one that had a questionable performance, it seems like no one really wants to talk about it or make a comment, because, you know, nobody has.
Here we go. You could not like the joke. You could think it's a bomb. Here's the thing. Tony Hinchcliffe wins in the end, because you know why? Almost the whole goddamn politically active, if not just people on social media, heard about Tony Hinchcliffe. And out of all those people, he got a shitload more fans. So you can say whatever you want about Tony Hinchcliffe. I made a movie about this that said he pulled off one of the greatest political stunts ever known to make himself. He just pulled off this shit show, even if it went bad. The whole world was talking about Tony Hinchcliffe that whole week. Leading up to the election, after the election. Joe Rogan, biggest podcast in the world, is talking about it like almost every other episode, if not every one. Tony is winning here. Who cares? Who cares? He made a shitload of money. Unlike us, sitting here, watching YouTube, hoping that one day our dreams too will come true.
Mentioned Tony's recent special or set that he uploaded on X, which I don't even think it deserves a review. And what's really wild is how at this point Tony Hinchcliffe is pretty much going through what Brendan Schaub went through, 6 or 7 years ago, because back then most comedians, with a few exceptions, would hold back and not say anything negative about Brendan Schaub because they were afraid that it would get back to Joe Rogan and potentially harm their chances of ever being on the Joe Rogan Experience, which is absolutely insane. But it seems like that is what's happening with Tony Hinchcliffe.
I mean, it was Burt Kreischer, Tom Segura, his wife, and then Russell Peters on there.
He's great.
And I love seeing Russell because he always busts my balls. But Russell, last time he made like a joke, a fight joke or something, because he went on after me, and he did that to laugh. Like, he always makes a joke. And I was like, God, it's brutal, man. And I said something to Rogan. I'm like, God, fucking Russell kind of bust my balls, man. It kind of hurt my feelings. And Rogan's like, whoa, that's what we do, man.
Yeah.
That's it's like the locker room. That's what we do. So I maybe Joe said something to Russ Peters. I don't know. But we were in the back. He goes, "What's up, sensitive Sally?" And I was like, and I was it was in front of everyone. I was like, I'm not sensitive, man. What's going on with you? He's like, bro, I was with you last time. I was literally making a joke, man. He goes,
so when, yeah, see, we covered this before, dude. Joe Rogan went and told Russell Peters, dude, Joe Rogan is a little bitch. He's the one that just runs around and causes drama, gossips behind your. Joe Rogan is I would not trust Joe Rogan with nothing. These guys don't understand. I think I covered this in another video. When it comes back down to it, Joe Rogan always has a hand in manipulating, twisting, all of that. He does it. The most notable one that most people will remember that happened recently was the Bert Kreischer, Mark Maron. Yeah, Bert Kreischer, Mark Maron. Joe Rogan spun that whole thing, and none of it was true. And it all started with Joe. Joe is a little gossiping biatch.
You guys called you. It was you and Brian, and you said that that you guys, my career was going to be over. That you guys have evidence. You know what I mean? That that I'm some Reddit mastermind. That there's
just gross.
You have
That's it.
Files and proof, and that you know, that you were going to expose me to Rogan and all these people, and that I should get a lawyer, and that I mean, this is what you had told me. And also, just mind you, it was at a level 10 of rage. It wasn't like a soft-spoken, like, you know,
Very aggressive.
Yeah, it was extreme, you know what I mean? Threats.
Now, that context is important because back then, the reason why Brendan Schaub's ego was absolutely out of control was mainly because of how close of a relationship, of a friendship he had with Joe Rogan, which essentially meant that he could be massively successful and wealthy without ever having to face, you know, any accountability or actually take in any negative criticism. And well,
Brendan Schaub is going to go down as like, just like an internet meme, right? He's going to be one of those, like, when this generation and my generation, we're all like really old and they're going over and be like, do you remember Brendan Schaub? Everybody's going to be like, man, dude, that dude's fucking crazy. You know, he's going to be one of those internet legends. Brendan Schaub.
Results was not only some of the lowest rated comedy specials of all time, but also it caused a massive fight and arguably one of the biggest fallouts in recent history when it comes to the LA comedy scene, or at least ever since the whole Joe Rogan versus Carlos Mencia situation. But then it also started happening to Tom Segura, because back then he was also Joe Rogan's favorite comedian and a good friend. For example, he would never get called out the same way that someone like Bert Kreischer would. And then when both Tom Segura and Bert Kreischer started blowing up to an insane level of fame, they both started slacking on their podcast, on their comedy, and stopped doing comedy on the show. They focused on weak projects and pushing their own brand, which seemed to be a move to try and make money and not really because it was, you know, something creative. And so they started pushing their core audience away. And so it wasn't because of politics. It wasn't because of cancel culture. It was simply that they got way too successful, they got lazy, but also their egos were so out of control that they actually thought that they could do the Netflix roast, the Tom Brady roast, by just winging it and not preparing or going to the rehearsals, which is absolutely insane. And it's a clear example of history repeating itself. And by the way,
okay, here's one of the things these guys forget that you just got to kind of accept if you're making content and it's on the internet. You can trick people, your employees, you could trick people around you because they want to keep good connections, but you can't beat the internet, right? You can't beat the internet. No matter how right you think you are, no matter how like convinced, the internet will shit on you. That's just how it is. If you put content, you are just getting shit on the internet for everything. Things you didn't even think of. You thought you covered all these bases, and these guys thought they were bigger than the internet. There will always be one person that I'll be like, you're fucking old. Your opinion is trash. How about you go fuck yourself? You know? That's how it is. And these guys just forgot. They forgot.
don't forget to like the video. It helps out so much, and I really appreciate that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Go like his video.
You know who I feel like, kind of? I feel like Nate Diaz right after he beat McGregor won. Like, I'm not surprised. Like, I've been underneath everybody's nose. All my peers know about me, but it's, you know, they know what's going on. But
yeah,
now,
after that, I mean, just, you were a superstar coming out of that.
And if you only knew, I'm about to spill the beans on these. They don't even know. I'm about to give them the whole inside scoop. They didn't want me to make fun of this. They didn't want me to make fun of that. And then we said, okay. okay, just the naughty kid from back in Youngstown, Ohio was like, okay, I won't do that. All right, I'll do that. I'll play by your rules.
And then you just get up there and you're just
Right.
They're all a bunch of drama queens, man. And I get it. That's what being a human is. Just creating levels of drama. I mean, just go look at your job. Look at all the drama at your job. These guys just have drama, job drama. That's all it is. And they're all just rich kids fighting for other dumb rich kids' rights. I don't know. That doesn't make sense. Or power. It's a power thing, right? Yeah. It's just stupid. It really is stupid.
Fuck the world. They gave me a chance, you know what I mean? They gave a hungry wolf a chance at showing what I can do.
Because once again, technically they didn't bomb. I mean, the audience was laughing, same as with Tony at the rally. But on paper, since they are the biggest comedians, expectations were really high. But also on top of that, they also agreed to do a different style of comedy at the roast, essentially doing a presentation or a multimedia comedy show. And when it comes to Tony, pretty much it's very similar to his decision to do comedy at a rally, even though everyone, including Joe Rogan, told him not to.
Why did you do that? I tell all comedians, don't ever do comedy at something that's not a comedy event. Don't do it. Don't ever do comedy at a place that's doing also.
Yeah.
Doing, you know, is it gonna have a bunch of speakers and you're gonna go up and do 10 minutes? Don't ever do that. It's a terrible setup. It's a terrible setup, and it's a political rally, and you're doing jokes like you're in a comedy club. It doesn't. You can't. Don't do it.
And when it comes to Hinchcliffe, it also seems like he thought he was big enough to take a massive risk and, you know, and be able to get away with it, which clearly that didn't happen. But also what's really shocking and different about this whole situation with Tony versus when it happened to Tom and Bert is how much Joe Rogan is going out of his way to try and defend Tony's ego and the joke itself. Again, when it was about Tom and Bert, Joe kind of ignored the whole situation and moved on and never really brought up their sets. But when it comes to Tony, he's trying very hard to defend him and kind of changed the narrative. I mean, even Shane Gillis on a recent episode kind of called out Joe Rogan for trying way too hard to defend Tony.
The island of Puerto Rico should go on Are You Garbage?
You son of a. That's the last. We gotta remove that from the internet.
No, I love Puerto Rico. San Juan,
I'm
baby.
kidding. That's the Tony joke.
What a wild.
The thing is that joke was based on his need to, like, he gets freaked out about the environment. He gets freaked out about the pollution patch.
While he's in a throne.
We were super high. We were super high in the green room. And he's like,
regular
dude,
world.
He's like, how long have there been plastic? There's only been plastic for 6 years. It's bigger than in Texas. It's in the, and so he starts getting obsessed by garbage, and then he finds out about Puerto Rico. And so then he comes up with this joke, there's an island of garbage. I think it's called Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
And it's like, but the joke was actually out of his concern that Puerto Rico
He's an
is being
environmentalist.
smothered by garbage. He actually loves Puerto Rico.
He's trying
It's
to protect our parks.
He's just he's a retard. He's just a retard.
He's a
And
male
he
Greta
doesn't
Thunberg.
understand. People don't know the whole backstory to that joke.
It's
they
so
know that's
funny,
a joke
too,
about
yeah.
Puerto Rico. You're doing it at a Trump rally.
You should have defended him. You should have come out and just been like, he's retarded.
That would be the right way to say
yeah.
it. I kind of did. I mean, I basically said that. Like, this is where it came from. Like, Tony's just he's a insult comic. He's the best insult comic in the country. If you want to watch that roast, watch that Tom Brady roast.
Oh, it's so funny watching Jon
He's a
Stewart
master.
go like that's just our world.
He's easy to hate.
That's true.
Especially if you
He's
don't
trying.
know him.
He's trying.
He's trying to get hated. He likes being hated. He's a villain in a pro wrestling
He's
show.
a heel, and the
Yeah.
heels went wide, and it became a different vibe.
Yeah.
And by the way, I completely understand and support Joe Rogan wanting to defend his friends, of course, but this goes way beyond him wanting to defend or side with Tony, and it does come across as him being delusional because when it comes to stand-up comedy, you know, having a bad set or having somebody talk bad about something that you did, it's kind of normal. It's part of the business, and it's not the end of the world. But the way that Joe Rogan is going out of his way to defend Tony, again, it doesn't really make that much sense unless, of course, he is simply just trying to protect Tony's ego, which would be insane. Or what makes more sense is that potentially, you know, they're trying to save a deal that was in the works for Tony. And since this whole thing is a
good
bad
point
joke for Tony, you know, they're trying to rewrite the narrative or explain to everyone what actually happened. Because when it comes to professional stand-up comedians, you know, it is a horrible look. There's no excuse. I mean, just like a pro athlete knows the basics of their sport, like aiming at the goal, a professional comedian should know the basics of how to set up a joke. They should know that context is important, and also they should be aware that performing comedy at a political rally could be very risky and not the best idea. But also, Joe Rogan's and Tony's explanation doesn't just miss the point, but it treats the audience like they're too dumb to get it, when in reality the problem was that Tony wasn't that funny. I mean, it would be like if a football coach was watching their kicker miss the ball and send it to the parking lot, but then turns around and tells the whole team and everyone, well, you see, in reality, the kicker was very concerned about nutrition and health in the country, and so he was aiming for the food stand or whatever. But everyone is missing the point and the message. I mean, that would be insane, but that is essentially what Joe Rogan is doing when he's using the excuse that Tony was concerned for the environment, and that's why he made the joke about Puerto Rico.
Okay. I just don't. Why? Who cares? Dude, I'm telling you, Tony wins in the end. He quadrupled the amount of eyes that are on him. You're not going to win all those eyes, but you're coming out with more eyes than you had. Who cares? And like, who cares? Who cares if you go to a political rally and it doesn't work? Oh, who cares? Why there gotta be all these rules about what, like, Donald Trump is saying the craziest shit ever. Why do we care? Tony is winning. I just don't agree with anybody. Tony is winning. And it's not the same Brendan Schaub art. Brendan Schaub did way, like, he did a book full of dumb shit. Like, they have a book just full of quotes he said. That's crazy. I think Tony is winning. And maybe they're just dramatizing this whole thing so it just keeps going. But a good point is the deal. The deal is possible. I could see that too. But like, if there's no deal, who cares? Tony wins in the end.
I'll hear this. People would say, is there any line for you? I would not use a racial slur. I would not use an anti-gay slur. And I will make gay jokes. I will make racial jokes. But I think once you use the slur, I think you're dead in the water. I've thrown comics under the bus for using slurs before. Because I just think it's got no business in stand-up comedy. So I would never do that. I wouldn't call it a line, because I'd be happy to talk about these subjects, but you have to do it in a smart way. Again, you want people laughing, not just like, that can't be all there is. It's got to be a laugh in there, and people
it can't be provocative for the sake of provoking.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to get people to feel and think something different.
And if you're provocative for the sake of being provocative, which again, okay, you can't complain about it. You can't be provocative for the sake of being provocative and be like, why aren't you laughing? You guys don't get it. Like, that's what embarrasses me about modern stand-up comedy, is the complaining from people who are just so clearly trying to provoke.
Okay, here's my thought. Call me crazy. He's gatekeeping just like Joe Rogan gatekeeps. They're just different. They're just believing in different types of gatekeeping. Like, because I think he comes off as super pretentious. Because even comedy can't just be one thing. Just like playing soccer, you can't just play it one way. People have their expression, their style, and there are core fundamental principles, things you do that are great, but at the end of the day, they all take different shapes. And these guys are all gatekeeping, and I think Anthony Jeselnik is just trying to get some attention for his special. That is what it is, and he's also jealous. I don't care if people say it's not. No, he is so jealous. You would not do this if you weren't jealous.
So you get bothered by the comedians that are complaining about what the present climate is?
I'm embarrassed by it. It doesn't bother me so much. It just feels like, why are we complaining? Comics are making more money than they've ever made before. This comedy boom is insane. You got this money, Netflix money, touring is huge, and people are just complaining all the time, and I can't stand it.
But that's what people do, and I think it's stupid. There's, I guess, maybe complain about comedy, but there's always going to be something you can complain about. They can still complain about the local climate. I just, come on. Yeah, but then there's the money point. But, at the end of the day, no matter how rich you are, you're going to complain, because all humans complain. Some people complain too much. you know, but this is how it is.
Why is that happening?
I think because they've gotten more money and more attention is on them, and they don't like negative attention. It's like if you want 1 million people to see your special, 100,000 aren't going to like it. And you have to be okay with that. You got 1 million people.
Yeah,
to watch
that's a good
People
point.
have forgotten about that. They just don't want to hear any negative complaint, or they use it as a marketing tool of the PC culture is trying to stop.
I like the people that shit on me in my comments, because then I get an opportunity to shit on them back. I think it's like a dance we do, as content creators. A lot of people are like, don't do that. You got to be like, look, I am nobody's fucking moral compass. Don't look to me for the answers of goodness. Like, I am just a regular old Joe. And so for me, it's kind of fun. Someone just you don't know, just comes and shits on you, and you could shit on them back. It doesn't matter. And then you could just delete it. Like it never happened. Good time. Get out. That's what you wish you would have said to your boss. I just don't take it so personal. You got to be creative. These people are being creative and insulting you. You got to come back. But honest opinion, though, I am trying to stop. I'm just trying not to do it because it can get out of control as well. And see, these are all problems of being a human. So I don't know if I agree with that.
Stop me. You better buy tickets to my show. And I think that's embarrassing.
Now, when it comes to stand-up comics complaining about cancel culture or censorship, I do agree that it's an annoying thing to complain about, especially
no, they should do
for
it.
The past couple of years, it hasn't been an issue. And even if it was, funny enough, when it comes to stand-up comedy, it is one of the few industries in which, regardless of what happens, the artist or the comedian can still manage to get on stage and make a great living. And so when it comes to Tony and the Rogan sphere, because they have the mothership, it is nearly impossible for them to get canceled or, censored. But it seems like what Tony really wants is to be able to make all the money in the world, get all the fame and attention while just putting out lazy comedy. Now, to be fair, I do think that Tony has that skill to come.
That's one of the few pictures that is quality enough to put on your YouTube video. If you'll see this picture a lot, because it looks like him now, and because he has there's not very many good pictures that you can use for YouTube thumbnails. And this is one of the good ones. So you'll see this picture a lot. I mean, you know what I mean? This is I mean, I could tell you all the Joe Rogan pictures. So a little sidebar, just if you want to know what the good Joe Rogan pictures are, just go look at all the people covering these stories, thumbnails, and you'll start to see all the patterns. We're all using the same pictures. You know why? It's conspiracy. A comedy conspiracy.
Come up with good comedy and be a good writer. I mean, he used to write for Comedy Central, the Comedy Central Roast, but lately it does seem like he's just been relying on lazy comedy because, for example, nobody's talking about Tony's random comedy sets that he uploaded to X, which was essentially Tony just complaining and desperately trying to explain why he had to do that joke and how it was just filler material, and also how he didn't really take an L and came out on top because he went off on this overweight lady. I mean, it's dumb. Now, some people will say that it was just a random improvised set, no big deal, but even a lot of his own fans are saying how it wasn't the best material or even that good at all, which is, it is weird, but to me, after watching that special, to me, it became very clear that Tony wasn't really worried about putting out the best comedy and being and he wasn't really worried about the art form like he's mentioned in the past.
But
wait, I'm gonna give you guys a reality check about the internet. This includes me. I'm making fun of comedy. I just find it interesting. I like hearing myself talk about stuff. Well, I just like being here. Being on the camera. Having a good time, talking about some shit that who really cares? But we do. Listen. You may get stuck in an algorithm. Your Twitter may be curated to where you're hearing all these hate about these comedians, but there's way more people out there that are supporting them. Because every night the comedy mothership is sold out, packed, full of people. They're getting Netflix deals. So listen, we are but a few. And don't get it twisted. That's the reality of the situation. I know nobody gives a shit about what I say, and I can say these things because if it was really important, it's not. They're still going to be rich, just so you know.
It's all about the art for you. Yeah,
And that's
absolutely.
it.
I like looking ahead at what's
Yeah.
next and things like that. Like,
And instead, he's just trying to save his reputation as being that one comedian from the roast of Tom Brady on Netflix. Now, it is a little bit strange that no other comedian or big podcaster is talking about this whole situation, at least not from what I've seen, besides obviously who Anthony has been talking to. And so I wonder if Joe Rogan or Tony Hinchcliffe will respond, because so far it's only been the Legion of Skanks comedians who have reacted to this whole thing. And I thought their perspective or their reaction was very, very interesting.
Is he going after edgy comedians, or does it just sound like he's going after them until he delivers his punchline, which is actually the
These guys are awful. I don't know, dude. These were. Yeah, these guys. I think they're horrible. I think they're horrible. I don't. Dave Smith. He doesn't remind me of a real man.
opposite of what you
Switcherinsco.
thought. It
Yeah,
was
maybe
gonna
nobody
do.
listened to the second half of this interview where he switches it and he actually likes it.
Because for a while
you guys
there,
have beef with Anthony?
Anthony has beef with. Anthony does not like any other edgy comedians. He
Sam.
wants to be the only edgy comedian out there.
One, I think he's hilarious. I think he's a great comic.
Yeah, as far as like left turn jokes, he's like tops. You know? He's like the best.
He's great.
Yeah, I mean, so apparently, I don't exactly know. I didn't watch a bunch of it. I know that it's been sort of going online. Is people talk? I guess Anthony took a shot at Joe Rogan and his podcast
Really?
listeners in a special.
Oh, I didn't hear
which
this.
I heard. I heard the joke. It's really not like people are.
It's a misdirect
bit.
joke.
It's just a bit.
Not, it's
That's
not
all
a
it is.
hard. It's not.
Oh,
a
it's in
hard
the
hit.
set. It's in the special. Yeah.
What do you think about cancel culture? So let me be clear. I don't give a about cancel culture. What I am sick of are comedians complaining about cancel culture. It's not that hard. Do your job.
Hey, don't laugh at him.
Comedians.
So far, what? We're trying to prove a point right now.
No.
Don't you dare. Hold on.
So far, I'm just enjoying it.
I know.
God damn it, dude.
Let me say this too. I watched the
Such a good
special.
comic.
It's very, very good.
No, he's a good comic.
I'm going to text Anthony after this. I watch your.
I don't trust any of these guys' opinions when they say he's a good comic. You know why? Because they say Bert Kreischer's a good comic. They say Joe Rogan's a good comic. I don't trust any of these guys. The problem is everyone is sucking on Joe's ding dong for some fame, some money, some airtime, that they've all been lying to each other, and they all say they're good comics. You know, of the legions of skanks, I don't think any of those guys are funny. Not one of them. Big J Okerson just reminds me of that, just like that goth kid you just didn't like in high school. And he's just a fucking smart ass, and you just couldn't, you know what I mean? Because you knew you'd get suspended if you just, oh yeah, you want to talk like that? You think that's for, God! Shut your mouth. That's Big J. I just wanted, yeah.
Special in Legion of Skanks. It's great.
Now, the reason why the Legion of Skanks
I don't even know if Big J
was
understands
so
his name.
interesting
I
is
don't know who he is.
because, you know, they technically had all the excuses and the reasons to attack Anthony. You know, they've had beef in the past. Anthony has called them out in the past. And, you know, they're cool with Joe Rogan, and they were on the podcast very recently. But they always seem to side with comedy because, for example, even back
Of all the guys of the Legion of Skank, Dave, is it Dave Smith? Yeah, he definitely takes it in the butt. He's the one. He's the one of the three.
then, when Brendan Schaub was heavily protected by Joe Rogan, Louis J. Gomez was one of the few, if not the only comedian who would openly make fun of Brendan Schaub and reference the Fighter and the Kid subreddit on his show. And whenever other Rogan Sphere comedians would be on the panel, you could tell that they were uncomfortable and afraid that would eventually get back to Brendan Schaub and then Joe Rogan. And now that we have Joe Rogan versus Anthony, again, it seems like they're siding with real comedy because even though at the beginning of the clip, they were jokingly trying to trash Anthony. Then at the end of the clip, they find out that Anthony wasn't just taking shots and, talking shit. And instead, he was actually performing great comedy and good jokes. Because, for example, some people were commenting saying that it was actually Katt Williams, the first one to call out the Rogan sphere. And although it's kind of true, I mean, he was the first massive comedian to acknowledge that Joe Rogan pushes the same 6 unfunny comedians or whatever. Technically, Anthony has been doing it.
I think all of Joe Rogan's friends are not funny. Name one of those comedians he has on that is actually funny besides like Shane Gillis. And Shane Gillis, since you've been hanging out with him, his last special wasn't as good as the first one, I think Shane needs to run. He needs to run. Just run, Shane. If you want your comedy to be good, don't stick around these boys because they're not going to tell you the truth. I tell you the truth. Just send me a tape. I'll tell you. But then I get I'm also just I'm well aware that it could just be me. I've taken too much brain damage, or I've just been my sense of enjoyment has just been nulled down to nothing, and I could just be like really messed up, and like all of these people that are supposed to be funny are funny, but to me it's just me. I'm aware that it could be that too, but none of these guys are funny.
A lot longer. And also the big difference is that, now looking back, it does seem like Katt Williams was just doing that to promote his new comedy special, because he ended up on Joe Rogan's podcast and didn't really call him out on anything. But if you compare that to Anthony, he didn't want to go on Joe Rogan's podcast and instead did a lot of other smaller shows and still killed it on his comedy special and made fun
I don't know.
I like Joe. Joe's my friend. Joe's a good guy. But if you listen to his podcast, you're a loser. My brother-in-law is Joe Rogan's biggest fan. Never misses an episode. Doesn't think 4 hours is long enough.
Good point.
Is Joe Rogan's
stop that!
But I can't argue with him. He's a paramedic.
Yeah, great. Yeah, he's
Edit this all. Edit every piece of this podcast right now. This is ridiculous. We're trying to trash Anthony Jeselnik for attacking Joe and Tony. You're not understanding the point.
You can't do it with the actual comedy.
God damn it. We should have.
It's true. I mean, listen.
Part in there where we would have gotten at him, but you guys cut all the punchlines together. That worked out.
Really?
Yeah, maybe if you guys weren't laughing so hard, we could have heard the unfunny parts.
I think there's probably some in there that sucks, right? I think I agree with the audience. It was so tight, the economy of words was mesmerizing. We can't wait for you to have Anthony Jeselnik.
Isn't that one of Joe's things? The economy of words. Hey, they're making fun of Joe Rogan and they're his closest friends, man. They got good points. I gotta laugh. They got good points. Making fun of Joe Rogan. Like honestly, I would like the whole Joe Rogan thing to just come to an end. And I'm saying that as like, I was a fan. I just like that someone was doing something different, saying the things that people didn't want to say. But we all know Joe has sold that boat down the river and he's a corpo. He's a corpo guy now. It just is what it is. But I'm just tired of, he's just getting dumber and dumber. And you look, the next Tom Segura is a serial killer episode. I think it's number 20 or 21. I got to say, I think Joe Rogan's involved in the whole Tom thing, right? I think he's got some involved because he said some pretty gross stuff in a recent episode that I'm going to cover. So he's busy doing allegedly serial things. And he's just lost. We need to get over that, and we need to go into a new era.
On the podcast, I'd love to have him on.
I swear on my son's life, we would love to have him on.
He thought the Brady roast was a big moment, even though I think those jokes were hack as hell.
Ooh.
This is all Jeselnik. Yeah. Hopefully.
So when I ask him later how he's thinking about the comedy after Trump's election winning, he says that his job is the same whether it's raining or shining. Everything is an opportunity. His opinion of Hinchcliffe remains unchanged. He is a troll basking in the shadow of Joe Rogan.
Wow. To be fair, Joe Rogan's shadow is pretty tiny.
There is no.
It's like he's a small guy. He's not a big guy.
It's wider than tall.
Yeah, it is wide.
And so, with that said, I don't think Anthony comes from a place of jealousy, as many people
Amen.
mentioned. And instead, it's he's just
It
doing
is what
what
it
a
is.
comedian does, calling out the status quo and the mainstream media. Because like it or not, at this point, Joe Rogan is the mainstream. I mean, there's no denying that. It's insane. And once again, I wonder if Joe Rogan or Tony or Andrew or Tim Dillon will respond to Anthony Jeselnik. It will be very interesting because this will be the test, the real test, to see if they can actually exchange with a comedian, with another legit comedian, because most of the Rogan Sphere comedians have been in a bubble, in a very protected bubble, in Austin, in the mothership, and also by being friends with Joe Rogan. And the only time that they really dunk on people or come out on top is whenever they do their own shows or their friends' podcasts, never out in the wild. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. Leave a like and subscribe to support the channel. Dislike if you didn't like the video. But that is all we have for today.
All right, go like Comedy Enforcement's video if you like it. I'll like it right now. Blam. My final thoughts. I kind of like Anthony Jeselnik a little bit better now, a little bit more. I'm more open. I'm still seeing a little jealousy. You wouldn't be doing that if you weren't jealous. It's a little pretentious to gatekeep. Just my opinion. I don't like gatekeeping. Taking fact, I don't like gatekeeping. It just really makes me want to just like fight you. Okay, this is what it is. I don't know. I'm gonna give him a shot. I'm gonna look at his special. But this is definitely publicity, jealousy, and a little pretentiousness. That is what it is. Have a good day. Bye.
Don't stay.